Hello, and welcome to HoneyBadgerRadio. My name is Alison Tiemann, and with me on the speakerphone, well, let's go with that, is Hannah Wallen, and we're going to discuss this week's HBR Talk. So, Hannah, you had an idea of what you wanted to talk about this week. Why don't you tell me about it and tell me why you selected it?
Well, actually, this was kind of inspired by the discussion in the digest that we do to talk about the previous week's shows, and we got to talking about the sort of gap in the perception of, I guess, accountability and culpability and intentions and so on between different political groups, particularly the men's rights movement and feminists, and our criticism of feminism's anti-male lobbying behavior versus feminism's anti-male narratives and then the lobbying that's based on them. So you have, feminists will essentially bully men. Feminists will essentially beat down men, attack masculinity, attack men's due process rights, attack fatherhood, and then men's rights activists will say, hey, cut that out. That's wrong. Men are human. We have human rights. We need to treat men equally to women in terms of human rights recognition and considerations. And the bystander, whether the bystander is a, quote, nice feminist like based mom Christina Hoff Sommers, or a political conservative, or a classic liberal. Like you see this sometimes with people like Joe Rogan. You see this even occasionally with some of the skeptics trademark have said this about us, that because we say stop that, it's wrong, we're just as bad as the people who are beating on men. And so I wanted to have that discussion just because this is something that is sort of hindering the public perception of men's rights activism. It's kind of eclipsing the public perception of men's rights activism and men's human rights. And so I think it's an important discussion to have.
What I've noticed in the context of this particular idea is that feminists can, to use a metaphor, they can shell the men's rights position. So they can be actively bombing the men's rights position. And if men's rights activists even run for a foxhole and say they're shelling us, bystanders will say you're equally culpable for the conflict. So men's rights activists are just recognizing that there is a conflict and that individuals on the other side of the conflict are engaging in activities that are directly harming the issues that we advocate for. And just by recognizing that there's a conflict and saying those guys are doing this to us, we become equally responsible for the existence of the conflict in the eyes of bystanders. And I look at this dynamic and I'm like, wow, what do you even do? What do you even do? How do you even make it clear to people that, no, we're not actually engaging in the same level of hostility or conflict that they have initiated by opposing the fact that they initiated this conflict? I mean, nobody on our side, or people may be on our side saying that women oppress men, but it's not necessary to believe that in order to advocate for men's issues or be a men's rights activist, because we don't have a set of beliefs about what women are doing versus how society is structured. All we are is saying these are issues that men face and they need to be addressed. And because we're pointing out that when you are a group of people who's asserting that men have all the privileges and that men have all the rights and that men are actively engaged in using those rights and privileges to oppress women, who incidentally are the group of people that are most people want to protect and provide for in society. So when you say you're doing something against our women, that's usually a setup for you're a criminal, you are an enemy combatant, you need to be gotten rid of. So when we point out that when they say these things and when they assert these things, they make our job impossible, we become just as culpable as them in the conflict that they initiated in the eyes of centrists.
That is basically what I'm noticing. They can't seem to tell the difference between beating the shit out of someone, and that's someone saying, "Stop hitting me, you asshole." And so they look at the person on the ground with the bloody nose and a black eye yelling up at their attacker, "Stop hitting me, you asshole," and say, "Name calling. You're just as bad. How dare you?"
Yeah, it's a difficult position to be in when you are up against a group of people who have established themselves as an authority in government, in media, in academia, and they've already constructed a gigantic narrative of how you are a threat to society. And what as a result of that narrative, everything you do is seen as many, many, many times more threatening than anything that they do. And it is a real difficult position to be in, and sometimes it's extremely depressing position to be in as well. It feels like you're constantly shoving a boulder uphill and it's never going anywhere. But you persevere because I believe that this is the right thing to do. That men need to have their issues addressed. We need to truly advocate for equal rights under the law, and that is important to do. So, if you're interested in hearing more of this discussion between myself, Hannah Wallen, Karen Strawn, Grow White's What, and Lauren Brooks, you can go, I'll get this right, here. Click here, it'll take you to the stream. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your kind attention.